Alright, so last week was chaotic. This week not a lot of stuff got done. The reason for that is pretty simple, and I promise you this is the last one. But the reason I didn't do a lot of work this week
is this little guy here, right here. This little, yeah. This is Loki, 7 weeks old as of yesterday. A little play buddy for Milo.
And if you've been with the channel for long enough, you might remember us getting Milo. This is just a shot of him back then, as we got him just like a kitten. That's how I introduced him. And Milo, this is our big boy now. It's a big baby monster. Yeah, he's a big boy. He just turned 1. He's very playful, but our other cats are 13 and 14 years old. Don't touch the light, please, Milo. Don't touch the light. Let me do this. The other cats are just too old to keep up with him and his playfulness. So he needed a little brother, Loki, and they have been playing around a lot. And I have to just look out for that because Milo is like a huge truck, and Loki is like a tricycle for a 3-year-old, and that Milo doesn't know how big and how strong he is. So we have to make sure everything goes okay. But this little guy, even though he's very sleepy right now, he's pretty cool and brave, and he actually chases Milo around the house. So he's not afraid. He's gonna be a big boy as well. And yeah, I'll let you sleep now. I'm gonna do the rest of the video without you. Maybe I will show you at the end, right? All right. After the intro, I'm gonna do a video, get some cool stuff for Residual and some cool tips for people trying to release games on multiple platforms. I'll explain all that later, after the intro.
So this is Residual running on my phone. It's not done yet, but it's actually playable, manageable, controllable, and it's pretty cool. This is the first time I'm actually entering a planet on mobile, and everything is working, everything is in there. So yeah, I'm very excited with that. Let me just quickly go back to the upper area.
Please stand still during teleportation, unless you want to look like a squash tomato.
So Residual on mobile, it's coming.
The process of getting this game up and running on mobile is mostly linking touch controls into every screen, every interface, like the inventory, your radar, just everything needs touch controls. And that's a little bit difficult in some areas because, well, touch control is just one event happening. You can touch something or you're not touching it. Where on Gamepads you have a lot of buttons. On the mouse you can drag and drop stuff. You can do that with touch and drag, but that's a lot of work to implement all those things into the game. And that's pretty much what I'm doing now. That means touch controls on the gameplay interface. That's just how this game is going to be played. And you can of course still use a controller on your iPad or your iPhone or your Android device, whatever. You can play the game with a gamepad, but for those that are used to playing games on mobile, touch controls on screen, just doing all that work right now. Of course, a lot of that stuff is already in the game because originally I started this game with the intention of releasing it on PC and mobile and consoles. But then the Kickstarter happened, the publisher happened, the game became extremely bigger than I originally thought it would be. And we just, the focus for me on mobile just kind of left the room. Also, the publisher wasn't really publishing on mobile, so that just was not something we talked about, and I just envisioned this game would be a big PC game and a big console game, and that's it. But now I want to have it on mobile after all, so that means I just have to do a lot of fixing in the code. But I'm almost there, nearly there, just a few more days tinkering with this, and I think I have a solid version. And then we're gonna have to do some testing. I still have to build an iOS version. I'm not there yet. My Mac has to do some updating still. But the Android version is almost there, and if that's up and running, the iOS version won't be a lot of work. It's just mostly the backend stuff of figuring out how to do iOS builds again. I haven't done those in more than 2 years now, so that's gonna require some figuring out. For other developers trying to do game and releases on multiple devices with different screen sizes, memory sizes, controller schemes and all that, I have a couple of tips. I've been doing this for a while now, so let's dive into some tips. First tip, a very obvious one, but still something that a lot of developers forget: your interface design. Don't build it around a certain resolution. Every device is going to be different, every resolution on those devices will be different, so try to keep your interface design in such a way that you anchor things relatively to the edges of your screen. So if you want something in the top right corner, just make it on the white of the screen minus the room you need. That way you will have the least problems. It's still going to be a problem if there's a lot of stuff happening on either side of that and then the screen is very narrow. It's gonna overlap. So try to make sure you know the lowest resolution of the devices you want to support, and even then make sure it works on even smaller devices. You never know what's going to happen in the future, what type of devices. Maybe at some point smartwatches or smart glasses or whatever are going to support games, and those are going to be weird resolutions, weird dimensions, whatever. So try to be very flexible with coordinates in your interface design. And also on dialogues or big pop-up menus or buttons, try to make them relative to the screen size or relative to the center of the screen, and then a certain weight based on the screen size and all those type of things. Don't just create hard-coded coordinates. Just try to make it all relative compared to the height and height of your screen. And that way you should have the least amount of problems when porting to other type of screens or devices. The second tip, also pretty obvious, but still a lot of game developers forget about this. Try to support gamepads, touchscreens, mouse, keyboard as much as possible. And this links up a little bit to your interface, because I've seen game developers working on a cool game that has an inventory system, just an example, and you can drag items from your inventory into your holding bag or whatever you want to call it. And that's a great idea to have on PC, just dragging and dropping things. But on gamepads it just doesn't really function that well. Dragging and dropping isn't possible. You don't want to drag it with your thumbstick, so you want to do some easy button presses and things. So try to keep that in mind, and also the size of things when you're selecting them. I usually program extra space around selectable things, because if you're going to do it on touchscreen, your finger, you don't want to touch multiple items at once, so there has to be extra room and extra space. You have to figure out those things first on mobile, know how much room you need for those type of things, and then design around that. So it's gonna be easy selecting a little icon with a mouse button, because it's at very pinpoint precision, but your finger on a touchscreen is not gonna have that. And for gamepads it doesn't matter a lot. You just need to be able to scroll through items, because you can't directly go to a certain item on the screen. You need to have some sort of navigation in there. So that's a lot of interesting things you need to try to just keep in your mind when you're designing interface, but also gameplay and everything around it. And the final tip, and I'm now gonna turn into that old game developer guy lecturing the younger people, know how much it costs to render and do stuff in your game. Especially if you're using tools like Unity or Unreal, Game Maker, whatever, using a lot of plugins or pre-existing code. It's gonna be awesome to have 100 different characters running around the screen, rain effects, light effects, water physics. You name it, it's all going to be awesome, but every feature requires a lot of processing power, either on your graphic card or on your computer. You can't just do everything you want, and there are limitations, especially if you want to support all the devices or maybe some rare devices. For example, my games on iArcade, which is an arcade cabinet based on some form of Android. It's not the fastest chip in those things, because it's pretty much built for retro type games and current Android games, but on a slightly older chipset. So it's not extremely fast. It's gonna be hard having your full PC game running on that device. You just need to make sure your code is fast and lean and mean. Same for a lot of older devices out there, older Android phones, older iOS phones, but also new gadgets like the Atari. There are markets out there that just use specific tablets and things that aren't standard and maybe running Linux, but not a standard full-blown PC Linux. Think about Raspberry Pi devices. There's just a lot of hardware there, and you might not want to support all those things or not care about those things. But if you want to actually make money, you want to release on as many devices as possible. And also if opportunities like this come up, you want to be able to have your game on there and not just run into a problem that the game can't run because it's just too much stuff going on and there's no way to easily toggle things off, and perhaps you could have optimized a bunch of those things before. Now, this doesn't mean I always know what I'm doing. For example, in Residual, I have a lot of vines that you can swing on and they are moving everywhere. But I think on the Switch version, we have a very tiny slowdown in certain areas where there's a lot of these vines hanging and being processed. This could probably still be optimized, but I'm not 100% sure it's actually the vines or something else. So that's still a little thing. But even I sometimes just want to dump a lot of stuff in there, test it on my PC, it runs fine, no problem. But then when we start testing it on other devices like a Switch, which hasn't a huge powerful processor, we start noticing some issues here and there. Even now with Regulator City, I have a bunch of code doing artificial intelligence, a lot of decision making going on constantly. I'm not sure yet if that's gonna run smoothly on the Switch. So there might be, I'm gonna optimize all that before I get to that point of porting it so that Serious Lion won't run into these things. But it's, yeah, you always have to make sure you know what goes on in your code, and this is one of the reasons I prefer writing as much of my own code as possible, just so that I know what's happening, and when I need to port it to either another language or just another device, I kind of know what's going on and don't have to worry about third-party stuff and code I haven't written, because I probably can't optimize that part. I can only optimize the code I wrote, and I like to have that control. And that's really a couple of tips I always keep in mind when designing my games for as many platforms as possible. And sometimes it goes as far as me actually coming up with a cool idea for a certain game, but then I know it's not gonna be interesting or useful on all devices, so I actually remove that idea. I could create something that's awesome and amazing and looks great on a PC and will run very smoothly, but I also know it's not going to be able to be ported to many other devices because it's just going to be hard making it run at a certain speed. At that point I just decide not to do that because I want to release on as many devices as possible, and that's more important than having that feature which then causes the game not to release on all the platforms. And I think that's where we're gonna end the video. Loki's starting to wake up, so he's probably gonna be playing, and we're gonna find his brother somewhere so he can actually run around and rush. Do you want to say anything to the camera? So I think we're done with this video. We're gonna play around the house a little bit. And no, you can't go on the table. No. Only if you're a plate, a mug, or a phone, or a camera, then you can go on the table. But if you're a cat, you can't. That's just a rule. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. And Loki says, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.